the world had changed. After the flood, after the plain of Shinar, after the languages split and the people scattered, the earth was filling again. Slowly, stubbornly, the way the earth always fills. New settlements in new territories, new names for new peoples, new gods for new cities. And there were many gods by now. The world that Noah's descendants had built was not a world that remembered the one who had closed the door of the ark from the outside. It was a world of many voices, many altars, many stories about where the sky came from and who had made the rivers and what the stars meant. The knowledge of God had not disappeared entirely. It had diluted, fragmented, mixed with other things until it was hard to find the original underneath. Into this world, into a city called in the land of the Chaldeans, on the banks of the great river, a man named Abram was living his life. We don't know what he looked like. We don't know what he did in the mornings, or how he spent his evenings. We don't know if he was rich or poor at this point, influential or obscure. The Bible gives us almost nothing about his early life. What it does tell us, quietly, almost in passing, is two things that matter enormously. The first, his father's name was Terah, and Terah had decided at some point to leave He gathered his household, Abram and Abram's wife Sarai and Abram's nephew Lot, and set out for the land of Canaan. They travelled as far as a place called Haran, and there, for reasons the Bible does not explain, they stopped. And Terah died in Haran. He was 205 years old. The second thing, Sarai, Abram's wife, was barren. She had no child. 2 sentences. And in those 2 sentences, the entire tension of everything that follows. A man whose family had started toward a destination and stopped short. A man with no children, no heir, no continuation of his name beyond himself. A man in the middle of a journey that had been abandoned, in a world full of gods that were not God, with a wife who could not give him what every man in that world considered the most essential thing a life could contain. This is the man God chose to speak to. The voice in Haran. There is no burning bush in this story, no angel standing in the road, no dream in the night with an interpreter standing by. The Bible simply says that God spoke to Abram, and what he said changed the direction of human history. Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. That is the instruction. Leave. Leave your country. Leave your people. Leave your father's house. Go to a land that, and this is the part that requires something extraordinary, I will show you. Not, go to this place with this name at these coordinates. Go, and I will show you when you get there. It is one of the most open-ended instructions ever given. There is no map, no timeline, no description of the destination, just go, in a direction I will point you as you walk. And then God added something to that instruction. 5 promises, stacked one on top of another like the courses of a building going up. I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. A great nation from a man with no children. A great name from a man living in someone else's city. A blessing to all the families of the earth from a man who had, as far as we know, given the world nothing yet. The promises were enormous, wildly, almost absurdly enormous, given the circumstances. A barren wife and an abandoned journey, and a man past the age when such things still seem possible. And God says, a great nation, all the families of the earth. The gap between the promise and the reality on the ground was vast enough to swallow a person's faith entirely. Abram went. So Abram went as the Lord had told him. That is the entire sentence. No recorded deliberation. No conversation with Sarai about whether this was wise. No asking God for more details or a clearer map, or at least a name for the destination. God spoke, and Abram went. He was 75 years old. The journey. He took Sarai, his wife. He took Lot, his nephew. He took all the possessions they had gathered and all the people who had joined their household in Haran. And they set out for the land of Canaan. Think about what that journey looked like. Not a quiet walk down a familiar road, a full migration. Servants, animals, tents, supplies for an unknown length of travel toward an unknown destination. Everything they owned loaded onto the backs of animals or carried in their arms. The city of Haran growing smaller behind them. The road ahead becoming unfamiliar, and then foreign, and then entirely new. And Abram at the front of all of it, 75 years old, with a barren wife and a nephew, and a word from God, and nothing else. Walking toward a land he would recognize only when God told him he had arrived. They came to the land of Canaan, and God appeared to Abram there at a place called Shechem, beside an oak tree, and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." And Abram built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. His first act upon arriving in the land of promise was the same as Noah's first act on dry ground: worship, not shelter, not a survey of the territory, an altar. Then he moved on, to the hill country east of Bethel. He pitched his tent there, Bethel on the west, Ai on the east, and built another altar and called upon the name of the Lord. Then he journeyed on, still going south, moving through the land that had been promised to his offspring, a stranger in every place he stopped. The famine. But the land of promise did not welcome him with abundance. There was a famine in the land. This is the kind of detail that stops you. God had brought Abram to this specific land, had promised it to his offspring, had appeared to him here, and the first thing the land produced was a famine. Not provision, not abundance, hunger. And Abram did what people do when the land cannot feed them. He went down to Egypt. Egypt in those days was the great, ancient, powerful civilization that sat at the edge of the known world, fed by the Nile even when the rains failed everywhere else. It was the place you went when the land could not sustain you. It was not the promised land. It was the practical solution. As they were about to enter Egypt, Abram said something to Sarai that reveals the fear underneath the faith. I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your account." It is a startling moment. The man who had walked away from everything at God's word, now at the border of Egypt, afraid for his life. And his solution was not to pray, not to trust the God who had spoken to him at Shechem. His solution was a half-truth. Sarai was his half-sister. The Bible confirms this later. But in this context, calling her his sister rather than his wife was a deception designed to protect himself at her expense. This is one of the things the Bible does that no other ancient text does quite so honestly. It does not make its heroes into something they were not. Abram, the man God had chosen, the man who had left everything at a word, was also a man capable of fear, of calculation, of choices that were not noble. The Bible shows both, without apology. Egypt. They entered Egypt, and exactly what Abram had feared happened. The Egyptians saw Sarai, and they saw that she was beautiful. The princes of Pharaoh saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and Sarai was taken into Pharaoh's house. And Pharaoh treated Abram well for her sake. Abram received sheep and oxen and male donkeys and male servants and female donkeys and camels. He was enriched, materially, substantially, because of the woman he had placed in danger. But God afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Pharaoh summoned Abram. "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say, 'She is my sister,' so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." There is something quietly remarkable about this scene. Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the known world, the ruler of Egypt, is the one speaking truthfully here. He is the one who has been wronged. He returns Sarai to her husband and sends them away. And Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, back toward the land of Canaan, back toward the south, back toward Bethel, back toward the place between Bethel and Ai, where he had pitched his tent before and built his altar and called upon the name of the Lord. He went back to the beginning. Abram and Lot. Abram was very rich now, rich in livestock, in silver, in gold. The wealth of Egypt had come with him. And Lot, who travelled with him, also had flocks and herds and tents. And the land could not support both of them dwelling together. There was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. In a land where water and pasture were limited, two large households competing for the same resources, this was inevitable. It was not a dramatic falling out. It was the slow, grinding friction of two growing households in a land that had enough for one. Abram came to Lot and said something that revealed the generosity at the core of the man. "Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left. The whole land before you. You choose first. Abram, the elder, the one to whom the land had been promised, the one with the greater claim, offered Lot the first choice. Lot lifted up his eyes. He saw the Jordan Valley, all of it well-watered, everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. It was the best land visible from where they stood, green and abundant and fed by water. Lot chose the Jordan Valley. He journeyed east, and they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan. Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. The Bible adds a note here, quietly, almost as an aside, that the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. Just a note, a detail filed away. The kind of sentence that seems small when you first read it, but that you remember later. The promise renewed. After Lot had separated from him, God spoke to Abram again. Lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. Lift up your eyes. The same movement Lot had made, lifting his eyes and seeing the Jordan Valley and choosing it for himself. Now God told Abram to lift his eyes and see everything. North, south, east, west, all of it. Not just the well-watered valley that someone else had already taken. All the land in every direction, as far as the eye could reach, and offspring like the dust of the earth, innumerable, beyond counting, from a man with no children, from a man whose wife was barren, from a man who had just watched his nephew walk away toward the best-looking land and had let him go without argument. God said, "All of this is yours, and your offspring will be beyond counting." Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron. And there he built an altar to the Lord. Another altar. Another act of worship in a place that was not yet his, in a land full of people who did not know his God, standing on a promise that had not yet produced a single child. Abram was 75 years old when he left. He had no map, no destination, no children, and a wife who had never been able to conceive. And he went anyway. What does it feel like to walk towards something you cannot see, on the strength of a voice you cannot prove to anyone else? To leave everything familiar, your country, your people, your father's house, for a land that will be pointed out to you as you go. And that choice at the fork in the road, letting Lot take the best land without argument, without resentment, without keeping score. Was that faith, generosity, or simply the quiet confidence of a man who believed that what God had promised could not be taken by someone else choosing first? The promises were enormous. The circumstances were impossible. And Abram kept building altars. In the next episode, the story deepens. God makes a formal covenant with Abram, the kind sealed with fire and sacrifice. Three mysterious visitors arrive at his tent in the heat of the day. And on a plain, not far from where Lot had pitched his tent, two cities that had been building toward judgment for a long time finally reach it.